others.
I have.
Late in the day, when there were fewer people about, Antonio and Ezio made their way to the Doge's palace. Treachery like this no longer surprises me, Antonio was saying as they went. Doge Mocenigo is a good man, and I'm surprised he's lasted so long. As for me, when I was a child, we were taught that the nobles were just and kind. I believed it, too. And though my father was a cobbler and my mother a scullery maid, I aspired to be much more. I studied hard, I persevered, but I could never make myself one of the ruling class. If you aren't born into it, acceptance is impossible. So, I ask you, Ezio, who are the true nobles of Venice? Men like Grimaldi or Marco and Silvio Barbarigo? No, we are. The thieves and the mercenaries and the whores. We keep this place going, and each one of us has more honor in our little finger than the whole pack of our so-called rulers. We love Venice. The others merely see it as a means of enriching themselves. Ezio kept his counsel, for he could not see Antonio, good as the man was, ever wearing the corno ducale. In due course, they arrived at St. Mark's Square, making their way round it to the Pink Palace. It was quite clearly heavily guarded, and although the two of them managed to clamber undetected up scaffolding which had been erected on the side wall of the cathedral which adjoined the palace, when they looked over from their vantage point, they could see that even though they could, and did, leap across onto the palace roof, access to the courtyard, even from there, was barred by a high grille whose spiked top curved outwards and downwards. Below them in the courtyard, they could see the Doge himself, Giovanni Mocenigo, a dignified old man who nevertheless seemed like a shriveled husk, inhabiting the gorgeous robes and corno of the leader of the city and the state, in conversation with his appointed murderer, Carlo Grimaldi. Ezio listened intently. "Don't you understand what I'm offering you, Altezza?" Carlo was saying. "Listen to me, please, for this is your last chance." "How dare you speak to me like that? How dare you threaten me?" retorted the Doge. Carlo was immediately apologetic. "Forgive me, sir. I meant nothing by it, but please believe that your safety is my principal concern." With that, the pair moved into the building and out of sight. "We have very little time," said Antonio, reading Ezio's thoughts, "and there's no way through this grill. Even if there were, look at the number of guards around. Diavolo!" He swiped the air in frustration, causing a cluster of pigeons to take to the air. "Look at them, the birds! How easy it might be for us if we could only fly!" Suddenly, Ezio grinned to himself. It was high time he looked up his friend Leonardo da Vinci. 17. "Ezio, how long has it been?" Leonardo greeted him like a long-lost brother. His workshop in Venice had taken on all the look of his workshop in Florence, but dominating it was a full-scale version of the bat-like machine, whose purpose, Ezio now knew, was one which he had to take seriously. But first things first for Leonardo. "Listen, Ezio, you sent me, via a very nice man called Ugo, another codex page, but you never followed up on it. Have you been that busy?" "I have rather had my hands full," replied Ezio, remembering the page he had taken from Emilio Barbarigo's effects. "Well, here it is." Leonardo rummaged in the apparent chaos of his room, but quickly came up with a neatly rolled codex page, its seal restored. "There's no new weapon design on this one, but from the look of the symbols and the manuscript writing on it, which I believe to be Aramaic or even Babylonian, it will be a significant page in whatever jigsaw puzzle you are assembling. I think I recognize traces of a map. He held up his hand. But tell me nothing. I am only interested in the inventions these pages you bring me reveal. More than that, I do not care to know. A man like me is only immune from danger according to his usefulness, and if it were discovered that he knew too much... And Leonardo expressively slit his throat with his finger. Well, that's that, he continued. I know you by now, Ezio. Your visits are never simply social. Have a glass of this rather awful Veneto. Give me Chianti any day. And there are some fish cakes somewhere or other if you're hungry. Have you completed your commission? The Conte is a patient man. Salute! Leonardo raised his glass. Leo, does this machine of yours actually work? Asked Ezio. You mean does it fly? Yes. Leonardo rubbed his chin. Well, it's still in the early stages. I mean, it's nowhere near ready yet, but I think, in all modesty, that... Yes, of course it will work. God knows I've spent enough time on it. It's an idea that just won't let go of me. Leo, can I try it? Leonardo looked shocked. Of course you can't! Are you mad? It's far too dangerous. For a start, you'd have to get it to the top of a tower to launch you. The following day, before dawn, but just as the first streaks of grayish pink were coloring the eastern horizon, Leonardo and his assistants, having dismantled the flying machine in order to transport it, had reconstructed it on the flat, high roof of the Carpexero, the family mansion of Leonardo's unsuspecting employer. Ezio was with them. Beneath them the city slept. There were not even any guards on the roofs of the Palazzo Ducale, for this was the hour of the wolf, when vampires and spectres were most powerful. No one but madmen and scientists would venture forth at such a time. It's ready, said Leonardo, and thank God the coast is clear. If anyone saw this thing, they'd never believe their eyes, and if they knew it was my invention, I'd be finished in this town. I'll be quick, said Ezio. Try not to break it, said Leonardo. This is a test flight, said Ezio. I'll go easy. Just tell me again how this bambina works. Have you ever watched a bird in flight? Asked Leonardo. It's not about being lighter than air, it's about grace and balance. You must simply use your body weight to control your elevation and direction, and the wings will carry you. Leonardo's face was very serious. He squeezed Ezio's arm. Buona fortuna, my friend. You are, I hope, about to make history. Leonardo's assistants strapped Ezio carefully into position below the machine, the bat-like wings stretched out above him. He was secured face forwards in a tight leather cradle, though his arms and legs were free, and before him was a horizontal crossbar of wood attached to the main wooden frame which held the wings aloft. Remember what I told you. Side to side controls the rudder, to and fro controls the angle of the wings, Leonardo explained earnestly. Thank you, said Ezio, breathing hard. He knew that if this didn't work, in a moment he'd be taking the last leap of his life. Go with God, said Leonardo. See you later, said Ezio, with a confidence he didn't really feel. He balanced the contraption over him, settled, and took a run off the edge of the roof. His stomach left him first, but then there was a feeling of wonderful exhilaration. Venice reeled beneath him as he tumbled and rolled, but then the machine started to tremble and fall down the sky. It was only by keeping his head and remembering Leonardo's instructions regarding the use of the joystick that Ezio was able to right the craft and guide it back just to the Pesaro Palace roof. He landed the strange craft at a running pace, using all his strength and agility to keep it stable. Christ almighty, it worked! Yelled Leonardo, careless of security for a moment, unraveling Ezio from the machine and hugging him frantically. You wonderful man! You flew! Yes, by God, so I did, said Ezio, breathless. "But not as far as I need to go." And his eyes sought out the Doge's palace, and the courtyard was his goal. He was also thinking of how little time he had if the murder of Mocenigo was to be averted. Later, back in Leonardo's workshop, Ezio and the artist-inventor gave the machine a careful overhaul. Leonardo had his blueprints laid out on a large trestle table. "Let me look over my plans here. Maybe I can find something, some way to extend the duration of the flight." They were interrupted by the hasty arrival of Antonio. "Ezio, I am so sorry to disturb you, but this is important. My spies tell me that Silvio has obtained the poison they need, and he's handed it over to Grimaldi." But just then, Leonardo shouted in despair, "It's no good! I've been over it, and it just won't work. I don't know how to extend the flight." "Oh, bugger it!" He swept papers off of the table. Some of them wafted into the large fireplace nearby, and as they burned, rose. Leonardo watched, his expression clearing, and at last a broad smile cleared the anger from his face. "My God!" he cried. "Eureka! Of course! Genius!" He snatched the papers that weren't already burned out of the fire and stamped the flames out. "Never give in to your temper," he advised them. "It can be terribly counterproductive." "So what's cured yours?" asked Antonio. "Look!" Leonardo said. "Did you not see the ashes rise? Heat lifts things up. How often have I seen eagles high in the air, not flapping their wings at all, and yet staying aloft? The principle is simple. All we have to do is apply it." He reached for a map of Venice and spread it out on the table. Leaning over it with a pencil, he marked out the distance between the Palazzo Pesaro and the Palazzo Ducale, putting crosses at key points between the buildings. "Antonio," he cried, "can you get your people to build bonfires at each of the places I've marked and light them in a close sequence?" Antonio studied the map. "I think we could arrange that, but why? Do you not see? This is Ezio's flight path. The fires will carry my flying machine and him all the way to his target. Heat rises." "What about the guards?" said Ezio. Antonio looked at him. "You'll be flying that thing. For once, leave the guards to us. In any case," he added, "some of them at least will be busy elsewhere. My spies tell me there's a curious shipment of colored powder in little tubes, which has just arrived from a country far away to the east called China. God knows what it is, but it must be valuable. They're taking such good care of it." "Fireworks," said Leonardo to himself. "What?" "Nothing." Antonio's men had the fires Leonardo had ordered built and ready by dusk. They had also cleared the areas around them of any watchmen or idle bystanders who might be inclined to warn the authorities of what was afoot. Leonardo's assistants had, meanwhile, transported the flying machine to the Pesaro roof once more, and Ezio, armed with his spring blade and arm guard, had taken up his position in it. Antonio stood nearby. "Rather you than me," he said. "It's the only way to get into the palace. You said so yourself." "I never dreamed this could actually happen, though. I still find it almost impossible to believe. If God had meant us to fly—" "Are you ready to give the signal to your men, Antonio?" asked Leonardo. "Absolutely." "Then do so now, and we'll get Ezio airborne." Antonio walked to the edge of the roof and looked down. Then he took out a large red handkerchief and waved it. Far below they could see first one, then 2, 3, 4, and 5 huge bonfires leap into flame. "Excellent, Antonio! My congratulations!" Leonardo turned to Ezio. "Now, remember what I told you. You must fly from fire to fire. The heat of each one as you pass over it should keep you in the air all the way to the Ducal Palace." "And be careful," said Antonio. "There are archers posted on the roofs, and they'll certainly shoot as soon as they see you. They'll think you're some demon from hell." "I wish there was some way I could use my sword at the same time as flying this thing." "Your feet are free," said Leonardo thoughtfully. "If you manage to steer close enough to the archers and avoid their arrows, you might be able to kick them off the rooftops." "I'll bear that in mind." "And now you must go. Good luck." Ezio sailed off the roof into the night sky, setting a course for the first fire. He was beginning to lose height as he approached, but then, as he reached it, he felt the machine lift again. Leonardo's theory worked. On he flew, and he could see the thieves tending the bonfires look up and cheer, but the thieves were not the only ones aware of him. Ezio could see Barbarigo archers posted on the cathedral roof and on the other buildings near the Doge's palace. He managed to maneuver the flying machine out of the way of most of the